Hello, this is Niswander, and you are watching the Nowman Show podcast version in this particular episode, and we've got a great one here. A returning guest to the show, Erika Podest from N.A.S.A, Earth scientist. Hello, Erika. It's great to see you again.
Hi, Dan. Great to be back.
First of all, we have to start with the unfortunate facts that we cannot deny. And 2019 was the second hottest year on record. What was the first?
2016.
One? Really?
Yes.
That being said, what are the implications of that? I mean, what can we expect to be happening now?
Yeah, so that has tremendous implications on our planet. Global warming is the cause of climate change, and all of the changes that we're seeing on different ecosystems around our Earth, our planet. And one of the areas that's being primarily affected, it's ground zero for climate change, is the Arctic. This area is warming up at least twice as fast as the rest of the planet. And that has huge implications. You've got a lot of ice on land. So you've got Greenland has kilometers of ice sheets, and that ice is melting. And when that ice melts, that water ends up in the oceans, and that's one of the causes of sea level rise. So, and there are many other things that are occurring. You've got sea ice that's melting, that's being lost. So the sea ice cover is declining. It's about 13% per decade. And in the future, it will probably be the case that in the summer, it'll be ice-free in the Arctic.
Wow. And I know one of the things that people try to debunk sometimes is the idea of global warming, right? Which is why the conversation shifted to like climate change, just like climate scientists, earth to earth science. It's all the same thing, but it's like, and because people say, well, it was freezing cold here last winter. I mean, like, people on the East Coast or whatever said, we were down in the below freezing for long periods of time. There's no such thing as global warming. That's not global warming. It's colder, and it's extreme weather, right? Extreme temperatures. How would you describe what really the effects of global warming as far as the temperature is concerned when people have those kinds of critiques and they say, well, it's colder, it's not hotter?
Right. So one thing is weather. The other thing is climate, right? So weather is day to day, right? You get your weather forecast, and they can forecast that out to a couple of days. Now, when you're talking about climate, that's something a bit more permanent, that's characteristic of a certain region, long-term characteristic. And so what we're looking at is how the climate is changing. The fact that today is colder than usual it's not necessarily an indicator of things not happening, right? So you have to look at the long-term average, and that is really what tells the story here. So if you look at how temperature is changing in the last couple of decades, if you look at how sea ice is changing in the Arctic in the last couple of decades, if you look at sea level rise in the last couple of decades, then that really tells a story. Everything is telling us that things are changing, right? So all the symptoms are there, that there is a big change going on in our planet.
And that's really what global warming and climate change is about, which is much greater than the weather, which people, that's what they see in their own communities, but they don't necessarily see the bigger picture. They don't see the melting ice. They don't see those pictures of, the polar bears on little pieces of ice. They don't see like you do when you go to the northern high latitudes and you see the vegetation growing where there should be more ice, right? Those are the things. Those are the facts that you see, that you put together with all your data to come to the conclusions that you do. So the scientists seem to be saying that we've got to get our act together in the next 10 years. Is that right? We need to really transition away from, for instance, fossil fuels in the next 10 years?
Correct. So the main culprit for global warming is an increase in greenhouse gases. So if you think about it, our atmosphere is a layer of gases that surrounds our planet, and some of these gases are greenhouse gases, and these gases, these greenhouse gases, they retain heat. It's natural. It's a natural part of Earth's system. If it weren't for those greenhouse gases, Earth would probably be too cold a place to live.
Yeah.
But we are increasing the concentration of those greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. And that is causing our planet to warm. So we're increasing that blanket, that capability of Earth to retain heat. And that's causing all of these other effects, the melting of ice, the increase in sea levels, the just ecosystems are being affected, all this havoc. So that's climate change. So we need to do something about it to stop the acceleration of the effects that we're seeing.
Now, going back to the Earth itself and biodiversity, you mentioned to me that we are in the middle of a mass extinction again. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yes. So biodiversity is something that I've started working on recently. And it's of great concern because biodiversity is being lost very quickly at the moment in our planet. And one of the things I mentioned to you was that we believe, or scientists believe, that Earth is undergoing its 6th mass extinction. So what does that mean? That means that we are losing biodiversity, we're losing flora and fauna at a rate that has not been seen since the dinosaurs were wiped out of this Earth.
Oh, wow.
66 million years ago. Yes, so that is the accelerated loss of biodiversity that's currently going on in our planet. And the main reason for that loss of biodiversity is because of human activities, because we are destroying habitats, both on land and in the ocean. In the ocean, we're overfishing, we're destroying corals. On land, forests are being cut for grazing, for agriculture, and biodiversity is being lost at a quicker rate than we can even document it.
Wow. Let alone replenish.
Correct.
Restore.
Correct. So there's been some dire warnings from international agencies about needing to do something very quickly in order to slow down this massive loss of biodiversity that our planet is currently undergoing.
And I know that it has a lot of economic ramifications too, because I've studied a little bit of that and talked to one of the originators of the original Green New Deal in 2007. And there's a lot of economics that goes into that, and planning that, and planning how you create that 10-year transition, right? Because you also have to think in terms of people need jobs, and, as well as how the technology is going to make that transition that has to be made. And the same thing, with animal agriculture because of the methane, right? And then the fires that we've seen in Brazil and Australia on a massive scale. I mean, we're losing some very important. In Brazil, we're losing a lot of the rainforest, the tropical rainforest that we need to maintain the biodiversity that you're talking about, right?
Correct.
And so, and thinking in terms of, how long would it take to restore that?
It might not even happen.
Yeah.
It's in many cases, species are lost, and they're just lost forever. And that is very concerning. I mean, you talked about the wildfires. They were huge in the Amazon, in Australia. They were massive. And I read that 500 billion animals were lost. Many of them were probably lost forever.
Yeah.
A lot of species were just lost forever.
Yeah.
And habitats destroyed. I mean, even the ones that survived, for them to come back to healthy populations will probably take a long time.
Now, most of you have never heard of Dave Keeling, which is just fine with me. And don't take this personally, but being here talking to you is not my idea of a good time. I'm here because I love this planet. I had a family, children, grandchildren, and I loved them deeply. Still do. So I can't stand quietly by and watch everyone and everything I care about, including our civilization, suffer a grueling, painful, completely unnecessary catastrophe. There's nothing inherently evil about CO2. Relatively speaking, there's really not that much of it in the air, way less than 1%. But ounce for ounce, it's very powerful stuff. Like greed. Greed, speaking of the 1%. One day, around the 4th grade, we got a new teacher. This teacher began telling us that the phases of the moon were caused by eclipses. By the moon passing between the Earth and the sun. Huh? I was horrified. I raised my hand. She ignored me. Finally, she kept going. I couldn't stand it. I stood up. I said, Miss Spencer, that's wrong. That's not true. You're talking about an eclipse. That's wrong. She gave me a look, told me to sit down and shut up. I always had a problem after that with ignorant people in positions of authority. You know, like Congress, for example. Remember the cigarette companies, Philip Morris and Friends, what they did in the 1950s? The tobacco industry created a phony research institute that issued official appearing reports about how there was no real evidence linking cigarette smoking with cancer, heart disease, emphysema. 9 out of 10 doctors smoked Camels. Remember that? 8 of them are dead. These are from tobacco industry documents, and this is a real quote. Doubt is our product. Doubt. The industry's strategy does not require winning the debates it manufactures. It's enough to foster and perpetuate the illusion of controversy. Like greed, doubt is very powerful stuff. If you're looking for a reason not to believe something, try doubt. What's happening right now is that the Arctic is warming up twice as fast as the planet as a whole. In 30 years, since 1980, we've melted 80% of Arctic ice. Ice that was in place for about 125,000 years. The Greenland ice sheet covers 80% of Greenland, and it's melting. Unlike the Arctic ice, Greenland's ice is land-based. When it melts, sea levels will rise. Underneath the Arctic's permafrost is methane. Over a period of 100 years, methane is 20 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. Some of the permafrost is a mile thick, and it holds twice as much carbon as the atmosphere does right now. It isn't all going to melt at once, but one projection is we'll see a melting of about 10 feet of worldwide permafrost in this century. And there's also a tremendous amount of methane buried under the ocean floor. There's methane deposits there that have been held in place by permafrost lids. As the ocean warms up, these lids are beginning to leak. We're seeing methane chimneys now bubbling up off the coast of Arctic Siberia. What can we do? For 130,000 years, human beings, anatomically identical to us, with brains and native intelligence on a level with ours, lived on this planet. One generation followed another, and nothing ever changed. And then the climate changed. It warmed up. Sea levels rose, people came out of their caves, enjoyed the stable, relatively benign climate we've taken for granted for the past 10,000 years. Within 5,000 years, we had writing, first cities sprang up, all the advances that characterize modern civilization came about, learning, science, the arts, medicine. The new climate was stable. It's been remarkably, uniquely stable for the past 8,000 years. It's the only climate we've known on the only planet we have. And we've had a civilized world because we've had a civilized, stable climate. And now we're in danger of losing it. It's said that humankind is on a journey from the caves to the stars. If so, it's been a journey fraught with challenges. And at each of them, we have overcome those who would lead us back to the caves, who would stop us, the fearmongers, the haters, the doubters, the liars. Today, it's the profiteers who would fill you with doubt and lull you to sleep, ask you to deny your very senses. We have the ability to face what confronts us. What is needed is the will.
The concept of global warming, which I think people politically have decided to call climate change.
Yeah, yeah.
Although we are now finding every year getting warmer, and some people are saying, oh, they did talk about global warming, didn't they?
Yes.
But I think what it needed was relevance. It needed relevance to our lives today.
Let's look at Keeling himself. Now, did he come up with this parts per million thing?
Oh no, that preceded him.
Yeah.
He knew nothing about carbon dioxide.
Oh, he didn't?
No, this is 1953. He surveyed the work that was, most of it was being done in Sweden. Matter of fact, all of it in Scandinavia.
Wow.
And he decided pretty quickly that it was totally disorganized. You know, they were taking readings all over the place, using different equipment, different technicians. And he came up with his own methodology, which was remarkably simple. First, you have to collect an air sample. So he invented a flask to do that. And then you have to measure it.
Yep.
And he discovered this thing called a manometer and adapted it, and that was it. He was off and running.
One of the great things about the guy, and it's something many people I think identify with, is what drove him west and what drove him into science was his love of the outdoors, particularly mountains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was he liked the science and nature.
Oh yeah.
Indeed.
Which all of us do really.
Sure.
When we're young, that's when we first understand that, hey, you know, you go to a river, or you go to the beach, or you you make that connection automatically, and that it arouses. You know, what makes this happen? How does this work?
Yeah.
And that's where it starts.
He didn't realize though right away that the CO2 was going up. That was could be a problem. And then he discovered quickly that all the afternoon readings showed the same number, 310 ppm. He went all over California, all over the West, even on the East Coast. Everywhere it was the same number.
Hawaii too?
Yeah.
When he eventually went to.
Oh, sure. It's the same all over the planet.
Yeah.
And that was a startling discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could it be that the number is the same all over the world?
Yeah.
And if so, what does that mean? Well, what we found out is it means that it's rising and that we are in danger as a result of that rise.
And of course, just like any other scientific study, it takes years to really have enough data to be able to project forward, which is what he did. And he did this during the course of the 1950s and 1960s, correct?
He did it the rest of his, for the next 50 years. He did it until his death in 2005.
Oh, really?
He discovered or came up with the idea of investigating how to get old oxygen out of ice cores.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
The permafrost?
Yeah.
He was also involved in that?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Really? I
He was
did
in
not.
the, around 1980.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, they
You know?
discovered there were bubbles inside the ice cores. They'd never been able to get inside. There was CO2 in there. And they analyzed the CO2. They discovered an almost perfect correlation between CO2 and temperatures. In the past, thousands of years ago, as CO2 levels went up, temperatures went up with them. As they went down, same story. Temperatures went down. So he realized, and it sounds bizarre, but CO2 acts like a thermostat.
The arrogance to break the law and then the ability to get away with it. Not only that, but when people stand up peacefully to ask that the law be enforced, and instead of aligning itself with the law-abiding citizens of our country, the power of this state and other states are aligning themselves with the law-breaking entity. Now, I say they're law-breaking because we know I've been an environmental attorney for 30-some years, and I've been fighting these battles, and I know what they're doing is illegal, and that we will win this battle ultimately in court. And they're trying to build this pipeline fast so that they don't have to face their day in court, so that they can say, well, it's already built. What is the greater threat to this nation? ISIS or global warming? Because the Pentagon has already answered that in a very comprehensive report. And they've said the single greatest threat to American security is coming from global warming.
Hello, this is Niswander of the Nowman Show, and I'm here with the lead instructor at the Permaculture Academy, who's also an ecological designer and a green business consultant, Larry Santoyo. Larry, welcome to the Nowman Show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Now, we are here at the Green Festival, and you just did a talk on permaculture. Now, your work consists basically of teaching permaculture, and also you have a design business. Before we talk about that a little bit, for the listeners out there that may not know the definition, what is permaculture?
That's something that I almost always avoid the answer to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked, so while I think of some way to change the subject. There's really no succinct way to answer it. All these years I've tried to come up with a way to do that, and I think that in the last few years, the way that I've been describing or defining permaculture design before I change the subject is that permaculture design is decision-making and problem-solving protocols based on natural patterns. That's it. It's not about gardening. It's not about techniques and technologies. It's not about building with straw or mud. It's problem solving and decision making protocols based on the observation of natural systems. And you can use it for gardening, you can use it for natural building. You don't do permaculture, you use permaculture in what you do. You're a journalist, you could use permaculture design. I happen to be an educator and a designer and a builder, and I use permaculture design.
I love that definition. And actually, you know, the word culture automatically implies that.
Yeah, I think that people still describe it, and even maybe Bill Mollison would describe it as permanent agriculture, and I've heard him say that before, but I've also heard him say that it was meant to be permanence in culture. So the idea, you know, knowing full well that nothing is permanent, and I think that that's the brilliant part of that design, that our definition of permanence is constant change.
Welcome. Thanks for being on the show. Let's start this with a video called Boxes and Bags. This is Matt Orfalea.
If I want what's inside the box, why do I need the box? And inside the box, there's a bag.
And then when I buy it, they bag the box with another bag. And then another bag because the bags are so cheap they break. Then I gotta put the bag in a box and 2 bags in my car, which is basically a box with wheels to get back to the box where I live. Then I unpack the car, unbag the bag, unbag the box, unbox the bag, and rip the bag so I can finally eat. And then I gotta put the bags and box in a bin, drag the bin to the block to get picked up, to truck, to dump, and boat by the billions to Bangladesh to save a few bucks at best. The boxes are buried or burned into our biosphere, or a baby bird might bite a bag with his beak and stop breathing. That's some bullshit.
Hi, hello Jill. My name is Niswander. I'm from the Nowman Show in Pasadena.
Oh, cool.
And we are here at Bernie's Coffee House. And this is Jill Stein, for those of you who may not know. This is the Green Party presidential candidate. Jill,
one of the things that concerns a lot of us, millions of people actually, are out of work, they're underemployed, they're re-unemployed, which you know what that is. You've talked about the Green New Deal and also an emergency jobs program. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yes, we actually have an economic emergency. The recovery's really been at the top. For
Yes.
most Americans, it's a struggle, and the jobs that have come back are low-wage, part-time, temporary jobs. The average wages for workers are barely above poverty. So we want to tell it like it is. We have a jobs emergency, and we have a climate emergency. We can only fix them together. So we call for the creation of 20 million jobs, like the New Deal, where we created millions of jobs in a matter of months, actually. This time, those jobs will also transition our economy to clean, renewable energy, to a healthy, local, organic food system, and to public transportation. It turns out we also get healthy in the process here, because if you clean up the pollution that kills 200,000 people a year, and we have healthy food, and we've got public transportation. It's, it's like, what's not to love about this picture? In fact, it pays for itself just in the savings in healthcare alone, and it also makes wars for oil obsolete once we've, greened our energy system. So this is like an emergency program that will revive our economy, and it will put an end to climate change, and it will end the crisis of unemployment and joblessness for once and for all. It basically creates the right to a job at a living wage.
Absolutely. And a lot of people will ask, how is that going to get paid for?
So it turns out we get so much healthier by getting rid of this polluting energy that we save enough money that it takes about a decade or so to pay back the cost of the transition. So yes, there's an investment here, but it's an investment that pays back right away. We spend $3 trillion a year right now on our sick care system. It's not a healthcare system, because we make ourselves sick with the pollution, a bad food system, and a passive transportation system. So just by creating a real structure for health, we get so much healthier, we save so much money that alone pays the cost. Also, with a green economy, we don't need the wars for oil. We don't need to have 1,000 bases in over 100 countries around the world. A military that's eating up over half of our discretionary budget, and has just brought us failed states and mass refugee migrations and worse terrorist threats. So we need to cut that bloated and dangerous military budget and put our dollars into true security here at home, creating a jobs program that will also cure our climate and give us a future that we deserve.
What do you think about the idea of worker cooperatives and even the equivalent of a small business administration that would provide resources and services in the same way that they have with capitalistic corporations, but do it for worker cooperatives that are done in a more democratic fashion? What are your thoughts about that?
We're on exactly the same page here,
Yeah.
because this is part of the program that we've called for in a Green New Deal, is to promote a cooperative economy. So the Green New Deal provides subsidies and grants for small businesses, but also for worker cooperatives and community cooperatives and nonprofits, and it establishes an office of the cooperative economy, because we're used to this old kind of economy based on greed and selfishness. We need an economy that works for all of us, that's based on the golden rule, if you will.
I love it.
Yeah, and so we need help. People need help establishing worker cooperatives and getting them up and running.
Democracy and compassion. Thank you, Jill, so much. This is Niswander for the Nowman Show. Thank you for being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great talking.
Likewise.